How's it going, everybody? So, when I'm watching videos or reading materials on the ketogenic diet and energy metabolism, and when I'm paying attention to lectures and things on uh, the hormonal theory, the hormonal belief, school of thought, on obesity and why people get fat and even health and things like that. A common criticism I constantly see is, well, if if it's all about hormones, if it's all about insulin, ghrelin, um, uh, uh, leptin, and these hunger hormones and these so-called fat storage hormones, if that's what's actually causing obesity and diseases, then how come restricting calories in versus calories out, works so well? I mean, we see all these bodybuilders and these professional athletes and just all these people making transformations simply by burning more calories than they consume. So why is calorie restriction, how can calorie restriction be bullshit if it works? How can calorie restriction be flawed if people constantly are using that principle to get results with their weight? And even in some cases, reversing diabetes and things. Okay, so this is a thing. Just because somebody is restricting calories does not mean that they are not using the hormonal principle. When you restrict calories, depending on how you do it, it actually does change how insulin works in the body. It can actually cause insulin to become more sensitive, which is why a lot of people can reverse diabetes through traditional calorie restriction. And the other thing is, your hunger hormones, it's very, very common for people to be craving all sorts of foods when they're doing calorie restriction. This is actually backing up the hormonal theory on weight loss. This is actually in support of Gary Twabs, or Gary Tubes, or however you say his name, and his theory on insulin and hormones being the main issue here. When you try to restrict calories, okay, first of all, it depends on what you're eating. If you're eating potato chips, what is that common phrase? I bet you can't eat just one. Once you start eating potato chips, it's very hard to stop yourself. You want to eat the whole bag. And people constantly need cheat meals and cheat days when they're doing this calorie restriction. You still crave a shit ton of food because you're depriving your body of its basic calorie needs, and you're burning more energy than you're consuming. And this causes the body to be stressed. It actually increases cortisol. It's been scientifically proven. It can cause insomnia in many people, and it actually lowers your immunity. No matter what people say about these rat studies on caloric restriction increasing longevity, and the malnourished Okinawans who did calorie restriction during World War II and the War of Okinawa, no one has looked into that enough to know that it was because of famine. They didn't calorie restrict on choice. Anyway, caloric restriction works because it is depriving the body of the energy that it needs to repair exercise, and so your body taps in to, or to even, you're depriving the body of the energy it needs to sustain the current weight you have and its current energy requirements, depending on how heavy you are. And so the body taps into its fat stores in order to give it that energy. But the problem is you're also sacrificing valuable micro and macronutrients through caloric restriction, including amino acids or protein, to sustain muscle mass and neurological function, as well as enzymes. All these things are created entirely by amino acids and protein. And so people try to either keep their protein, they try to lower their protein to lower the calorie count, they try to lower their fats to lower their calorie count, or they lower their carbohydrates. And so depending on what you sacrifice, this can have very drastic issues. This can cause lots of health problems. And of course, it's been shown scientifically that when you do caloric restriction, you want to keep your protein high for better results. Compared to people who don't do calorie restriction, protein supposedly isn't as important. And it's interesting that studies have found higher protein is required on caloric restriction, or it produces better results. So the thing is, and that by the way should make you think. The thing is, when you go on a ketogenic diet, so there's been people who have done their own experiments where they eat 5,000 to 6,000 calories every day on a ketogenic diet. There's some people who've done carnivore diets like this, and a lot who have done ketogenic diets. You could look it up on YouTube. Okay, there's people who've done experiments on a ketogenic diet where they try to eat like 1,000 to 2,000 more calories than their basic metabolic rate requires, or their exercise and all these things. And what they found is no matter how many calories they eat on a fucking ketogenic diet, they can't seem to gain body fat. So, of course, a conventional diet that includes carbohydrates, you see all sorts of people who eat 5,000 calories a day on a regular diet, and they start to gain fat mass. Okay, this tells us that a calorie is not a calorie. We know there's different thermogenic effects depending on macronutrients. Protein and fat tend to actually burn more energy from metabolizing these macros than carbohydrates. The other thing is that your hunger hormones change. Okay, so even if you did manage to eat 5,000 calories worth of meat and butter, which you're not going to do very easily unless you're purposely trying to. Seriously, think about eating 5,000 calories worth of meat and butter. It's not going to happen. You'll be lucky to get 3,000. Really, think about how hard it would be to overeat meat. It's going to be hard to even like stomach that. But compared to potato chips and carbohydrates, it's so much easier to just overeat and overdrink. You can easily drink gallons of fucking soda every day. You can easily eat pounds of French fries every day. So already you can stomach way more carbohydrates than protein and fat. But even if you could stomach the same amount of protein and fat, most people say they can't gain fat to save their lives on that. And usually the people that do gain fat on a ketogenic diet, there's certain types of foods that they're consuming that either they're intolerant to, it's causing inflammation, and maybe some people are different, obviously, right? So what's the other thing? The other thing is that your gut microbiome changes to where you crave different types of food. You don't crave the processed carbs, you don't crave the potato chips and the types of calories, the types of foods that promote weight gain. In fact, your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, regulate. People often feel much less hunger when they eat more fat and more protein because it's more satiating and because it's more, let's just say it's more metabolically balancing. Because I only have 10 minutes that I can record on this iPhone. They don't crave a bunch of donuts and things like that, okay? So even if it's caloric restriction that is to blame for their fat loss and the benefits of a ketogenic diet, you can restrict calories without having cravings. Also, insomnia, after the fat adaptation phase, which can last 4 weeks, insomnia isn't a problem for people in ketosis. In fact, even if they only sleep 4 to 6 hours a night, people report way better wakefulness. Like they can get by on much less sleep through ketosis, whereas caloric restriction causes lethargy, grogginess, and they start to lose motivation to even go to the gym because they're not giving their body enough energy to do so. Ketogenic diets give you an unlimited supply of energy. You're literally burning your body fat for fuel. It's a more effective way to burn body fat than caloric restriction because that's the entire purpose. Ketones are created from body fat, and you're adapting your body to burning your body fat to sustain your daily activity versus caloric restriction that doesn't take this into account. So there's a whole lot more I need to talk about this, but I can only record 10 minutes on my iPhone. Leave your questions and comments down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you in the next video.